My husband thinks that because I had a difficult labor, naming our daughter after his ex as his mother wanted is a way to help me by taking a burden off my shoulders. But the burden I'm actually removing is him by taking his name off the birth certificate. Hi, I'm 28, a woman, and I had a difficult pregnancy from the very beginning. Besides the typical complications one might experience, I had a rare condition, so rare that it doesn't even have a name yet. I know it affects some women, and I hope this post helps give it one. It's a condition caused by a mother-in-law and a husband who enjoy complicating things as if giving them a grandchild and a son isn't enough. They seem to enjoy twisting the knife at the worst possible moment with their demands. My 30-year-old husband and I were excited about the baby, but my body didn't handle the pregnancy well. I was constantly nauseous, frequently dizzy, and was admitted to the hospital twice for dehydration. It wasn't a simple pregnancy where everything is beautiful and you look like those models who get pregnant and somehow become even more stunning. And as I said, those weren't the only complications, though. Not everything happened right at the beginning. My husband was attentive, or at least I thought so. He'd take me to doctor's appointments, bring me food, and even took care of some household chores. I didn't realize his support had limits until everything crumbled at the hospital. My husband and I had been married for 4 years. We met in college and things progressed quickly. He had an ex-girlfriend named Lily, the same age as him. They dated for almost 5 years and were even engaged but broke up 6 months before he met me. He always said it was mutual and they weren't compatible. I believed him. But even after we got married, his mother, this harpy woman I'll call Carol, kept mentioning Lily from time to time. She would say things like she always thought Lily was the one for my husband, or Lily this or Lily that. At first, my husband would defend me and tell her to shut up for good. At home, he would assure me that his mom just liked Lily and there was nothing to worry about because she was just his mother who was getting old and stuck in the past. She wasn't that old, but since he defended me, I let it go. Let's fast forward to the day I went into labor. That day, I literally told the nurses to bring whoever was necessary to get my baby out because I couldn't take it anymore. Not because I didn't want him, her, but because it was hard enough just wanting to be a mother. I was 37 weeks along, so it wasn't premature and my water broke early in the morning. My husband drove me to the hospital. Everything became terrifying very quickly. The labor was intense and I started bleeding heavily. The doctors rushed me for a C-section and during the surgery I lost a lot of blood. I had a hemorrhage and became unconscious. I was transferred to the ICU right after delivery, and later they told me I almost died. I would say my experience was not pretty. We weren't all smiling and taking pictures. That's why I'm so angry about what happened next. I don't remember much from those hours. I was drifting between consciousness and unconsciousness, hooked up to machines and on medication. Our daughter was born healthy, thank God. She was very small, about 3 kgs, but her APGAR score was perfect. The nurses kept saying she was a fighter. My husband was the first to hold her while they attended to me. I had told him months before that I wanted us to decide on a name together, and I had some in mind, but we hadn't finalized anything. We had narrowed it down to 3 names we both liked: Nora, Kaisel, and Eliana. When I fully woke up for the first time, I was still in the ICU. My throat was sore and I could barely speak. My husband came in with a strange expression, both nervous and excited at the same time. If you've lived in a farmhouse and had a cat, it's like a cat that's stolen something from the kitchen and doesn't want you to find out. I was too weak to ask many questions, and he just kept saying I needed to rest and that the baby was fine. At first, I didn't give it much thought. I was just relieved she was okay. It wasn't until the next day when I was moved to the regular maternity ward that I could properly see my daughter. The nurse brought her in and she had a small name tag on her bassinet. I blinked, thinking maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. The name on the tag said Lily. You know whose name that is, and you know it wasn't among the names we both chose. It was my mother-in-law's choice, or so I thought. Honestly, I thought it was some kind of macabre joke. I have nothing personal against Lily, but I am not naming my daughter after my husband's ex. When I asked the nurse if it was a mistake, she told me no, that the father had already signed the birth certificate and that the grandmother had helped with the name because I was unconscious. My husband came in shortly after holding a coffee as if he hadn't done the most idiotic and disrespectful thing in the world. I couldn't even look at him. My voice was still weak and I was sore, but I managed to ask if he had really named our daughter after his ex. He looked trapped, unsure how to lie properly. He said he thought it was a beautiful name and that it would have been too much to wait for me to wake up and decide while I was so sick. Carol had suggested the name and he said he thought it was nice to accept it. Nice. It would have been nice if I had the energy to chase them all over the hospital in a gown armed with some blunt object that wouldn't bend on the first head blow. I needed to be able to keep hitting after the first. Sorry if I sound a bit aggressive with these comments, but this is what happens when you spend hours in a difficult labor and mommy's boy listens to his mother. As far as I recall, he married me, not his mother. His mother wasn't the one who was pregnant. I almost died giving birth, and at the damn moment when I couldn't speak for myself, he decided it was the perfect time to let his mom name our daughter after his ex. Not just any ex, but the one she always wanted him to be with. In fact, he had the audacity to say he thought he was relieving me of a burden, as if naming my own child was a chore, as if he was doing me a favor by snatching away that decision. The burden I was going to relieve him of was his head, because he wasn't using it properly. I was trembling. It could have been the medication, and I could barely hold my daughter for more than a few minutes. And yet there I was, forced to process this incredible betrayal. I couldn't even get up and leave. I was trapped in that hospital bed with stitches, bruises, and emotional damage. The nurses kept calling the baby Lily, and every time they did, it felt like a slap in the face. Every mention of that name was like pushing me further out of my own life. Carol came to visit me later that day with a smug, "I won. You can't do anything because you're helpless," smile on her face. She was also twisting the knife, saying my daughter's name was beautiful, that the name was this and that. I wanted to throw the hospital remote at her, but I only had one shot and then I'd be defenseless. What made the situation worse was how my husband kept downplaying it as if it wasn't a big deal. He said I was being emotional, which, surprise, surprise, happens when someone literally almost dies in childbirth. He acted as if the name didn't matter and that we could always change it later, as if it was just a placeholder name, as if it wasn't a reminder that he still had feelings for someone else, someone his mom openly wanted him to have married. I couldn't talk to anyone about it right away. My parents live in another state and couldn't come immediately due to a snowstorm. My best friend had just had her own baby and was also recovering. I felt completely alone and powerless. The only good thing about that period was thinking about what I was going to do from that moment on. When the nurse asked if I wanted to confirm the birth certificate details, I asked to make a change. I wasn't in the right state of mind before, and I didn't want that name to be official. I filled out the paperwork to correct it and decided to also remove my husband's name. He hadn't acted like a decent father, husband, or even son. He didn't care that his mom was making decisions as if she were the baby's mother. I checked the father unknown box and signed everything as a single mother. My husband barely came to visit me while I was recovering, and when he did, he acted as if nothing had happened, as if I should be grateful. His mom, Carol, always had that sneering smile while I tried to rest. She would bring clothes, tell the nurses what the baby needed, and refer to her as her Lily. I remained silent. I didn't want to let them know yet what I had done and that they couldn't just steal the baby. Once I was discharged, my husband found out I changed the certificate and removed his name. He didn't say anything immediately, but I could feel his anger growing. A few days later, he exploded. He said I had embarrassed him, that I made him look useless, and that I ruined what his mom had planned. He never asked how I felt. He didn't care that I almost died or that I was suffering. Everything was about how it made him look. Carol was even worse. She left a long message calling me selfish, saying I ruined the baby's life by not giving her a complete family. She said I was punishing my husband and depriving her granddaughter of him. She told me I was a bad mother for starting drama over a name. If it was just a name, they could have used one of the names we had shortlisted. My husband only wanted to get involved again if I put his name back on the certificate, kept the name Lily, and allowed Carol to visit freely. That was not going to happen. I told him that if he wanted rights, he would have to go to court. I wasn't going to hand anything over to a man who made decisions for his mom instead of supporting his wife. He said I was being dramatic and acting like a single mother, so I told him, okay, I will be. At least I'll be one who protects her daughter. I legally changed our daughter's name to Hazel, the name I had originally chosen. It felt like regaining control of my life. It was like reclaiming my baby as mine, not as a symbol of my husband's past relationship or his mom's whim. Now my husband is angry, and Carol is telling everyone I'm unstable. Some members of his family believe naming her after his ex wasn't a big deal, but none of them were the one left bleeding and unconscious, while someone else made a permanent decision about my daughter. Now I'm doing this alone. It's not easy. I'm tired all the time and I'm still recovering, but I don't regret what I did. I look at Hazel and feel peace. I don't feel rage when I say her name. I know this will complicate things with my husband. He's already talking about lawyers, but I'm not scared. I did what I had to do for myself and my daughter. So now I ask, am I the asshole for removing my husband's name from our daughter's birth certificate and listing myself as a single mother after he and his mom named our baby after his ex while I was in the ICU? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since I decided to remove my husband from the birth certificate and give my daughter a different name, replacing his ex's name. I need to tell you about some things that happened during that time. First, let's talk about people's opinions. I think most agreed with changing her name, and I haven't seen many say it wasn't a big deal for my daughter to have an ex's name. But removing my husband from the certificate? Not so much. That was more divided. Divided because people think it's unfair to my husband since she's also his daughter, or because now I can't claim child support. Honestly, my peace of mind is more important than any child support I might get from him. On the other hand, he always has the option to go to court and demand to be included. At least if he does that, it will show that he wants to be a father, and not just name his daughter after his ex in a somewhat twisted way. Because yes, it sounds twisted to name your daughter after your ex. They should be different relationships, different loves, so it's wrong on many levels. And for whoever said I only did this because I'm afraid my husband will discover the baby isn't his, I'm not afraid to take a DNA test. Besides, if it were true, I'd be doing him a favor by taking away all obligations. Don't you think Reddit should have an intelligence test before commenting to filter out these hateful remarks that offer little to no argument? But back to the update. He had been telling his mutual friends that I was just being emotional and would change my mind in a few days, but when it became clear I wasn't going to, he got angrier. Carol flooded my phone with messages for days. I stopped answering after a few because it was always the same: how I was ruining the family, how cruel I was, how I was hurting my husband. She never asked how I was after almost dying in childbirth. She never mentioned Heisel except to say she was her granddaughter and had every right to name her whatever she wanted. No, ma'am, I gave birth to the baby, so I have the right to name her. My husband too, but he lost it by doing something so sickening. Last week my husband packed some things and left without saying much. He's now staying with Carol. I didn't ask him to leave, but he made that decision on his own. I think he expected me to chase after him or perhaps apologize, but I didn't. I was too tired to deal with his ego. The silence was actually a relief. The apartment felt peaceful for the first time in months. I finally had room to breathe. Heisel and I started to get into a routine. She's a calm baby. Fortunately, I think she's as exhausted from the pregnancy as I am, so she was born the calmest little person I know. She wakes up every few hours but calms down quickly. I've been recovering slowly both physically and mentally. I'm still sore, still exhausted, but at least I don't have to deal with someone who makes me feel like I don't matter. In the first few days after my husband left, I heard from some of his cousins and a mutual friend. Some clearly sent by Carol said things like, "Your husband is heartbroken and you're being unfair to your daughter by keeping her away." Others tried to be more neutral, just saying they hoped we could work things out. I didn't argue with anyone. I just said I was focusing on Heisel right now. That was the truth. I'm documenting all of this. You never know what you might need in the future. She thinks I'm not doing anything, that she has the upper hand, but the truth is I'm quietly preparing. That's the best way to deal with these people because in the long run they crumble on their own. My husband hasn't contacted me to see Heisel even once. He hasn't asked for a photo, an update, nothing. The only message I've received from him since he left was a brief text saying, "We need to talk about my rights." That was it. Nothing about how the baby was just his rights. I replied once saying that if he wanted to go the legal route, he could. I wouldn't stop him. I haven't heard from him since. Heisel's name change was approved. Her name is now officially Heisel, the name I had chosen before all the drama. I can't even explain how much better it feels. Saying her name aloud makes me feel proud. I know this isn't going to be easy. I've accepted that I'll be doing this alone for a while, maybe forever, but it's not as scary as I thought it would be. I've had help from a couple of friends. A coworker who is also a single mom left me baby clothes and frozen meals. Another friend checks in every day to make sure I'm eating properly. These small things have made a huge difference. My parents will also finally be traveling, and perhaps my mother will stay for a while. Some people have asked me if I'll ever get back with my husband, and the answer is no. Not after what he did. Not after allowing his mom to name our baby while I was unconscious and then getting angry at me for being upset. I don't trust him, and trust is everything when you're raising a child. He can be our daughter's father. He can go the legal route, and I won't deny anything like DNA tests. But our relationship died at that moment. I've also been thinking about what I'll tell Heisel someday when she's older and asks why her dad isn't in her life if he decides not to fight for anything. I want to be able to tell her the truth without anger. I didn't mention it before, but I'm pursuing a divorce. The problem is that in my state, there's a waiting period after childbirth before you can file the papers, so I can't do it immediately. Update 2. Something happened over the weekend, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. 2 weeks after my husband left to stay with his mom, he showed up at my door. It was early Saturday morning. Heisel was still asleep in her bassinet. I was sitting on the sofa eating toast in my bathrobe hair, a mess absolutely not ready for any drama. When I heard the knock at the door, I assumed it was a delivery. Instead, it was my husband. I stood there for a second, completely surprised. He didn't look great either, but at least I had the excuse that I wasn't expecting anyone. He didn't ask permission to come in, he just said he wanted to talk. At first, I didn't say anything. I think he expected me to scream or close the door, but I just stepped aside and let him speak. He started by saying he had messed up, that he hadn't realized how serious things were until I made everything official, removing his name, changing the name to Heisel, completely excluding him. He said that the last 2 weeks without us made him reflect on everything he did wrong. He admitted that he shouldn't have let his mom name Heisel, that he froze when the nurses asked and didn't know what to do. And when Carol intervened, he allowed it. He said he was scared and overwhelmed and thought he was doing the right thing. Then he apologized, and the apology seemed genuine, not just one to fix things and move on. It doesn't change my decision, but at least he apologized. He said he was sorry for not defending me, for not protecting my voice when I couldn't speak for myself, for not stopping Carol from steamrolling me in the hospital, and for disappearing when I needed him most. He said he never intended to hurt me and didn't realize how serious everything felt until he saw his name wasn't on the birth certificate. He asked if there was any way to fix it. I told him that Heisel was fine, that I was fine, that we were managing things without him. I didn't say I forgave him, but I appreciated his apology for everything. He stood there awkwardly for a while, and then asked if we could sit and talk more. I let him in mainly because I wanted him to see that Heisel was doing well without him, that I was surviving, even though he might think I'd fall apart. He sat on the edge of the sofa looking around as if our home had changed without him. It hadn't changed. It just felt different now that he wasn't there. He asked what he could do. I told him that if he really wanted to be in Heisel's life, he would have to prove it. Not with words or apologies, but with actions. He asked if that meant lawyers. I said, probably yes. I wasn't going to open my door every few days for him to appear and disappear. Heisel deserves better than that. I told him I'd be willing to discuss a co-parenting plan, but only once he started therapy and took responsibility. Real responsibility, not a sad speech at my door. He said he understood. He asked if he could at least send things for the baby or help with bills. I said no for now, not because I wanted to be spiteful, but because I needed space. I don't trust him yet. He left when things got difficult, and now he's back because the silence scared him. That doesn't mean he's ready to take responsibility. He left after about an hour. He didn't try to pressure me. He just said he would be in contact and hoped I'd let him know when I was ready to talk more. Since then, he sent a couple of short messages just to see how we are, which was much more than he did recently. Carol, of course, found out and is now back with full force. She sent me a long message about how families argue and that I should focus on healing, not punishing. I didn't even bother to read the rest. She's blocked. She doesn't realize she had a huge responsibility in all of this and hasn't offered any apologies or considered that talking only makes things worse. It's not that my husband isn't an adult and doesn't have responsibility, but she acts as if nothing happened. I don't know what will happen with my husband. Maybe he'll truly try to change. Maybe he'll disappear again. Maybe we'll end up in court. Or maybe we'll find a way to co-parent from a distance. For now, I'm not making any promises to him or to myself. I'm just focusing on Heisel one day at a time. If my husband wants to earn a place in Heisel's life, he can. But he has to understand that I'm not the same person I was before. I'm not the scared, exhausted woman lying in a hospital bed letting others make decisions for me. I am Heisel's mother, and no one can take that away from me. Update 3. I think it's been a month since my husband showed up at my door saying he wanted to fix things, and now I know for sure that I've moved past him this mess and the idea of waiting for him to be someone he's not. After his visit, my husband kept sending messages every few days, short things like, "Hope Heisel is doing well," or "Thinking of you two." Nothing intense, but enough to show he wasn't going to disappear again. Then about a week ago, my husband asked if we could talk in person again. I said, okay. We agreed to meet somewhere other than home while my mother looked after Heisel. She's moved in for a while to help me with all of this. He arrived early and brought flowers. I didn't accept them because I didn't want him to think I was opening the door for him to come back. He looked nervous again, as if he didn't know how it would turn out. I sat down, ordered a coffee, and told him we had 30 minutes, no games. He started by saying he had begun therapy only 2 sessions so far, but that he was serious about it. He talked about how he realized he had a habit of shutting down when things got tough, and how his relationship with Carol was much more controlling than he had admitted. He said she always made decisions for him growing up, and part of him thought letting his mom name Heisel was normal, as if he was just helping. He said he now understood how wrong he was, that I should have been involved in naming our daughter, not his mom, and definitely not with an ex-girlfriend's name. He said he felt ashamed of how he handled everything from the hospital to leaving to not defending me. I listened, letting him say everything. Then I told him that I appreciated the apology, but it wasn't enough if he expected us to get back together, that I couldn't go back to him and hope that something like this wouldn't happen again. He looked hurt, but didn't argue. He asked if he could still be a part of Heisel's life. I said yes, but only if he committed to therapy, showed up consistently, and understood that everything was now on my terms. No Carol, no drama, no last-minute visits. I told him that if he wanted to seek official custody or visitation, we could do it through the court. But if he wanted to slowly, respectfully, and safely earn a place in Heisel's life, I was willing to work on that with time, effort, and proof that he was serious. He agreed. He said he understood. We finished our coffee in silence. Then I got up, thanked him for meeting, and left. Since then, my husband has followed through. He sent me a screenshot showing he booked 4 more therapy sessions. He wrote asking for photos of Heisel and asking if he could visit us next week, supervised for a short time. I know there are people who have told me not to let him into Heisel's life, that it's dangerous or whatever. I could make things more difficult for him, but the reality is that if he goes to court, we'll probably be granted shared custody. I've already discussed it with my lawyer, so I have 2 paths. Be the difficult ex-wife and have a bad relationship, or try to make the best of this whole situation. I don't mean that if he does something wrong tomorrow, I won't fight tooth and nail, but there's not much else I can do. Seeking full custody is a losing battle from the start because there's nothing to justify it, and it will only make our bond worse. I won't gain anything and will only make Heisel grow up with 2 parents at odds. We'll see how this progresses, but for now, this is what I have to offer. Update 4. This is an update on my life now that the divorce is complete. These past few months have been a constant change, but now I'm getting used to the new life. The papers were filed after the necessary waiting period following my daughter's birth, and my ex has also requested to be included on the birth certificate. That's the summary, and here are the details. My mother stayed for a while until she had to return to my dad her own baby. And I don't say that because my father depends on her, but he could live on pizza if my mother weren't around. And if she had stayed much longer, my mother would probably have to put him on a diet and exercise, which means rolling him around the neighborhood to make him lose weight. Anyway, my mother stayed long enough for me to get things in order, find someone to look after my daughter, and return to work. My ex-husband didn't fight the divorce and agreed to divide everything equitably. That was the first sign that he truly cares about his daughter and wants to be a responsible father. The second was his request to be included on our daughter's birth certificate. He has to pay child support during these months while she still needs to be with her mother, but when she grows up and is not as dependent on me, the payments will stop because we have arranged shared custody. The third and most important thing is that he has cut his mother out of his life. And it's not a simple, I won't text you or I've blocked you. He has completely cut her off and even told family and friends what's happening, to the point that she has made it a crusade that her own son, her flesh and blood, has forgiven me. The story is a bit long, and I don't know if my ex-husband will want to make his own post. I don't think it's my place to tell it, but I can say that the mother involved the ex Lily in all of this with very dire consequences for her, because the ex found out what had happened, and even she was shocked by what happened at the hospital. Let's just say my ex-mother-in-law won't be posting on social media for a while, and let's just say the name Lily no longer seems so attractive to her. Therefore, these are great signs that my daughter will not grow up close to that grandmother, although I will be very attentive to what might happen in the future. I'll surely post an update if anything like that happens, but if not, this might be the last one, although I will stay to read and respond to comments. M.